Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see so many of you here. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to A Date with SciComm. This is a well-anticipated event. I know a lot of people are very excited to be here, as am I. Again, as always with these events, I'm going to contain it and I'm going to let you ask your questions. I'm not going to get overexcited and ask all my questions. I will ask your questions. But as all of you know, we're here, the Black Women in Science Network has put this on with CellPress employees who you can see here beautifully on your screens with their cameras on, if you want to give a wave. Yeah, it's great to have them here. And I will let them introduce themselves, but before I get into that, I'll just do some quick housekeeping. As you know, we're meeting virtually. The meeting is being recorded just for the sake of the people who aren't able to join us here today. But if, for instance, you ask a question, you don't want it involved in a recording that's going to go on our website or be shared with CellPress, just send us an email. That's absolutely fine. We're happy to cut parts out or anything like that if you want anything kept private. If you want to ask a question during the Q&A section, feel free to turn your camera on and just ask your question. I'll kind of signpoint people, put your hand up. The hand up emoji is just, or the hand up icon is just at the bottom of your screens, or if you're on your phone, I think it's at the side. If you have any questions that you want to type, you can type them in the chat or you can use the Q&A function. We really, really want questions. The main segment of this whole thing is going to be questions. So just get your questions asked. If you're typing them, don't wait until the question time, just ask them immediately. We'll get them answered when we can. If you want to have your cameras on, absolutely happy for you to do that as well. We'd love to see you. If you don't, also very comfortable for you to do that. And I'll jump in now. And first of all, I will introduce the Black Women in Science Network. For those who don't know, we are a network that's here to kind of equal the playing field for Black women in science. We've put on a number of events over the past 3.5 years now, almost 4 years. And they are to, again, just increase the access. And it's a pleasure for us today to have CellPress employees here who are also passionate about the same thing and want to give you kind of a backstage access to what it is to work at CellPress and almost SciComm in general. There we have a variety of professions here with us, and I'm very excited for them to introduce themselves. So if you want to take it away, I'll pass on the mic.
Hi, thank you so much, Tomi, for having our team here. We're very excited to be talking to you all. So I'm Caeul. I am a senior editor in a journal called Cell Host and Microbe, but I'm also the Inclusion and Diversity Coordinator at CellPress. And I will be giving a brief introduction of CellPress, but then I'll leave the stage to my colleagues here, who are the 3 panelists. I can jump into introduction and then give time for each of them then to have a minute to talk about themselves. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. So CellPress, I wanted to give a general introduction about CellPress. I'm sure some of you are familiar, or maybe not as much. But CellPress basically is a family of journals, of scientific research journals. It started with Cell, which is our flagship journal, and John Pham here on our panelist is the EIC of Cell back in 1974. And for a long time, it's been mostly a life science research publishing group. I've put all the titles up here, which of our life science journals, in order of when it became CellPress, actually. But since more recently, we have expanded quite broadly into other areas in the physical sciences, earth sciences, clinical medical sciences. We also publish on data, big data patterns in cell genomics, as well as the experimental methods. So now it's a family of over 50 journals, including what we call a reviews-only journal. So the first slide I showed you, our journals that publish research articles, primary research, as well as what we call front matter, which is reviews journal distillating the literature for our audience. We also have these 16 reviews-only journal, which is a journal that publishes only those type of reviews article commissioned by the lead editor. And our brand, our tagline is science that inspires. And so what we're trying to do in all that we do is to disseminate science that inspires and do the science that inspires. These are some of the pillars that we think of when we work at CellPress. So we are a heavily editorially involved group of scientific journals. So we hope we're showing editorial excellence when we're dealing with our authors, reviewers, and readers. We try to find innovative ways to make this process more efficient and more equitable in many ways. And of course, our main goal with scientific communication is to give the visibility all of the research we publish deserves. And in all of that, in all of these pillars that we want to uphold, we think about the people. I said I was an inclusion and diversity officer. So we try to do a lot of different activities, initiatives to make sure that we are taking an inclusive and diverse lens to what we do. I'm very proud of the research integrity and reproducibility we want to disseminate, as well as the impact we bring to society. I put this slide, I won't go through it. It's actually a slide that that our team, illustrating team, had put together, kind of explaining what happens behind the scenes. And I told Tomi that we'll send the slides so you can have access to it, so you can go through it in more details. It's actually a little outdated in the terms that we use, but we have members at every stage of this process in the panel here that can talk to you more about the job. But if I sort of divide this the cartoon in what we do as scientific communicators, I think a big part of our job is being a mediator between different points of contact. We are in the middle, connecting authors, reviewers, readers. We have our editorial operations associate here, Noelani, who does a lot of that in the backstage, and she can tell you a bit more about all that happens to make sure the process happens in an efficient way. We have multiple departments here, and we all collaborate quite closely. Although each journal has their own team of editors and they work independently, we talk to different journals quite often on different topic areas. So for example, I'm a microbiologist by training, so I meet with other colleagues in other journals who also have a background in microbiology to discuss what happens in the field of microbiology, decide what we want for our journals. And of course, collaborating with again our authors and reviewers, and John Pham, who's here, who's been through the whole process from editor to AIC, can talk to you more about all the different type of collaborations we do, and a lot of the things we do is amplifying what we publish and the things we care about in science. I talked about scientific impact, social impact. So a lot of the activities that goes around that Jordan can also tell us more about is disseminating, how to most efficiently disseminate the things we care about and solid science. I think that's all I had for my background introduction on CellPress. I went quick, so please feel free to ask any question at any stage on there, and I will actually give the floor to Jordan, who can first talk about his role at CellPress.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Jordan Greer, and I work as part of the comms team at CellPress. Largely speaking, the comms teams helps with author inquiries regarding press, as well as sharing scientific material with reporters, as well as the general public. I've been with CellPress since January 2020, and actually I began as an intern where I was mostly writing press releases. And just to kind of give you a bit of a background on how the press release process even occurs, we speak with editors, they pitch particular papers, then we liaison with the authors of those papers, and then write up press releases that go out to the reporters, which hopefully then make it into some of the larger news organizations that you see, like the New York Times, CNN, etc. So apart from working in the inbox and dealing with the press releases and press package that goes out to reporters each week, my main focus in my job is the social media strategy for CellPress largely. So what I do is help to execute social media posts on our CellPress News channel. Please follow us at Twitter at CellPress News. I help to strategize social media workflows going forward for both the larger company as well as the individual journals. And then I'm also working to help us expand into other social media platforms. Who knows, one day you might see us on TikTok. That's the end goal. Next slide, please. But just for a little bit of background on me and who I am and how I got to where I am today, I am born and raised in Southern California, where I did my undergrad at UC Riverside, getting a degree in biology. Then right after undergrad, I spent some time working in biological control. So actually that picture there is me standing on top of a fence, putting a cage around a tree where we were studying citrus psyllids. And then after I did that, I decided to continue my education and went to grad school. And so during that time, I got a master's in animal behavior and physiology, where I studied the maternal care of earwigs, and then got a second master's at the University of Chicago, where I studied the evolution of cocoon presence or absence in ants. But after that, I really knew that I wanted to go the science communications route and leave research. And that's when I decided to go and become an intern at CellPress. And the rest is history, and here I am. But some things that I've been up to since I have been at this role and since COVID is, one example is I made my own roller skates. So I've been very proud of myself to do that. I've been trying to grow a green thumb. I have not been a grower of plants for a long time, but you might see in my screen behind me, some things are thriving. So that's working out. And then something else I've been doing is I've actually been an intern for a podcast called Big Biology, where we talk about evolutionary biology more broadly. And please do, if you like, subscribe to that as well. Next slide, please. But I also want to point out some of the favorite things that I've been able to be a part of or do since I've been working in social media at CellPress. Before I mentioned, I was able to work on press releases. And so on the top left-hand there, circled in blue, you can see a couple of the stories that I wrote as press releases that ended up getting into some of the larger news publications, which I'm really excited about to see. It's really cool to like write something and then see that work you've done and with those quotes you got the authors actually end up in larger press. I've also spent some time working on our Instagram page, which has been a really exciting thing for me to do, including developing reels, working on graphical abstracts, imagery, and then sharing some of our inclusion and diversity initiatives in that same way. And I would also like to center that, for particular in Twitter, we've been working at CellPress to really uplift other voices, including inclusion and diversity. We recently launched the Rising Black Scientist Awards, which I have listed there, as well as have done things like 100 more inspiring Black scientists in America. And then one other thing is I try to help the journals work together and be more collaborative in their social media strategies. And so at the bottom right-hand side, you see an example of kind of a Q&A with actual researchers that was bringing two different journals together to discuss different science. And yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And next up is Noelani, who can talk about a bit about herself and what she does next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Noelani, and I work as an editorial operations associate for CellPress. I am from Boston, Massachusetts, but during COVID, I had the opportunity to move and work remotely. So I'm now in Charlotte, North Carolina, where it's 51 degrees, not to brag. So a fun fact about myself I'll share first is, so I'm very good at writing. I went to school for media writing and communications, but one of my goals is to speak more publicly. And this was a great opportunity to stretch me and put me in that area. So just working with like, you know, nervousness and anxiety, opportunities like this has like helped me to accomplish this goal. I write poetry, I write short stories. I have a blog, which I'll share at the end of this. And yeah, I've been going to open mics and performing my live poetry. So my goal is just to be more confident and memorize my writing, because sometimes I'll read off my phone. So as I mentioned, I have a media writing and communications degree from Newbury College in Boston. My first job out of college, I worked at a nonprofit fitness center as a volunteer coordinator and an operations associate. So I managed the entire operations for this nonprofit fitness center. I recruited volunteers to run it. I did facilities maintenance and billing. So it was a lot, but that helped promote my multitasking ability. Prior to CellPress, I was working at Clover Food Lab, Inc., which is a plant-based restaurant. So I managed their front of house. Their goal was to get more people eating predominantly plant-based and also like save the world, practice sustainability. So they didn't have any words on the menu. I had to describe the menu, so there was a lot of talking, but that also encouraged my customer service. So during COVID, Clover Food Lab closed. The restaurant industry wasn't doing too well and they had to close. And that brought me here. With my degree, I've always wanted to practice, get into editing. And this was a great entry-level opportunity. So I'm not editing, but I'm an editorial operations associate where I am assisting the editors. So I am, like Kyle mentioned, the mediator, the middleman who is just helping all of our stakeholders. So that is our authors, our reviewers, and the editors. So each editorial operations associate manages a journal inbox, and they manage the internal and external communications. So I manage the Neuron inbox. This journal has been around for a long time, since like 1988. It's one of the oldest, along with Cell. I also guide the manuscript process. I help the authors with the submission process. So from the initial stage to acceptance, I'm there to assist them with any questions they have. It can be pertaining to uploading files. Has my article been peer reviewed yet? Where are we in the process? I've been waiting a long time. Editorial operations associates also conduct technical checks. So prior to a paper being accepted, we have a final files checklist that all the CellPress EOAs, editorial operations associates, use to check the format for a paper. So that's one of my favorite part of the jobs, is just going through the technical checks and submitting it back to authors. They make the corrections. Sometimes they don't get it all the time. Sometimes they don't get it right all the time, so they'll send it back, but just being a guide for them and being with them through the process is really encouraging for me. And then what else do we do? Excuse me. We also assist the peer reviewers. So the editors reach out to peer reviewers to review the articles. So we'll accept the invitations on their behalf and just keep up with communications with them, because sometimes they can be having delays or going through things. So we're just following up with them and making sure that they upload their comments. So we're helping everyone. We're like the wheels that keeps the car going. And I really love that part, because this process can be scary for some authors, and they've been working on their science and research for a long time. So just being there to support them during the process is very nice. So my least favorite thing about the job, I wish I would have been able to go to the office. John had shared with us earlier that he's at the office. I was a little jealous, because though I dreamed of working remotely, I have gotten a little antisocial, and I feel like I'm a recluse now. So I wish I would have been able, excuse me, to visit the office. But CellPress does a great job at keeping us updated. We have good communications. There's a lot of meetings, and everyone's just pretty much transparent and communicative. And I've been blessed to have this opportunity. So yeah, that's me. And regarding my blog, it's called livinglovingencouraging.com. I can put it in the chat. And I write devotionals. I believe in a higher power. So I just try to write motivational pieces and just inspirational pieces based off some things that I've been through to encourage others. So I'll share that in the chat, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And yes, please do share the blog post. I'll move on to the last panelist, who is our own John Pham.
Hey, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to join this. I'm really glad to be able to take part. Yeah, so my role at CellPress has evolved. So I've been here for a long time. This is my 14th year. Before I came to CellPress, I have to say I never was in a leadership position of anything. Never. I was very shy person. I still am. I introvert, very nervous public speaker. When I was a graduate student, even I was so nervous that I would write, if I had to introduce myself with a table of people, I would write down what I would say and memorize it, because I was so nervous, and my voice would shake. And I share that with you because I don't know, many of you are young, Noelani even, right? Younger people, just if you're interested in doing what you do, you never know where you'll end up, and you never know the kinds of skills that you'll develop along the way. I would never have imagined that I would ever become the EIC editor-in-chief of Cell. And yeah, that's like true story, right? Like not a natural leader, but it just happened. So a little bit about me and my path. I grew up in Florida. My parents were refugees from Vietnam, and I went to a public school there, which was, great actually. And but then when it's time to go to college, I had never seen snow or been anywhere really besides Florida. So I decided to go as far, like have an experience that was as far away as my existing experience at the time. So I went to college in Maine. I'd never seen snow before. I went there, I studied music and biochemistry. And then after that, I wasn't sure what to do with, I tend to be in my personal life, somewhat indecisive. As a EIC, I have to be quite decisive, but in my personal life, I'm like, I don't want to make decisions. So at the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really loved both, the sort of humanities aspect of my training and the sort of scientific side. So I applied to programs in both life sciences and in music, and made the decision was made for me because the science programs sort of were more generous in terms of the support, and so I could actually go and not have to get a stipend and not have to get even more student loans than what I had at the time. So that just seemed to be something that the road opened to me, and I did that. And I loved it. I mean, being an introvert, a scientist is a great job for that. You're sort of by yourself often. I mean, you're a part of a lab, but you sort of have your project, you focus, you're working on your own a lot. And I actually loved that. And then after that, though, I wasn't, I don't know, at the time, I wasn't as good. I thought I wasn't as good as my boss, and it seemed stressful thing to always need to get grants and support students and then be a leader of students, right? And postdocs, and that seemed sort of scary to me. So I started looking for other types of things to do. Well, first of all, I did a postdoctoral. I went and did a postdoc, which many sort of PhD scientists do as just sort of a thing to do, as a sort of way station. I would actually recommend against that for any of you who are not sure what you want to do. Like, if you want to go into academia, do a postdoc. If you're not sure, then find out, right? Like, find out whether the kinds of jobs that you can do, and then whether or not those jobs require a postdoc, because a postdoc, it's a long time. And, there are studies that show that, the longer you stay in postdoc, your overall sort of lifetime career earnings decrease, because you're not in a role that, you're not sort of in a role where there's advancement. So just a little bit of advice there that I've gotten just from being on career panels and learning from people who sort of think about this more deeply than I did at the time. So I joined CellPress. I was interested because there were issues of research integrity that I experienced and ethics that I experienced during my postdoc that sort of bugged me. And editorial was a way to, be able to sort of work on those kinds of things, and also to sort of think more broadly about science at the time. As I said, you sort of work on your own project, and in many ways I felt that was great, but it is you sort of tunnel vision a bit. And I felt like I really wanted to just, be thinking beyond the scientific research questions that I had been thinking of for the past, 6 or 7 years. So I joined CellPress as a junior editor on the molecular cell team, and then sort of things opened up to me, opportunities for me to work on projects with other people at CellPress, and do well in those things, and to be noticed, and then be asked to do more things. And leadership opportunities to lead projects came up, and I sort of did those and just learned how to lead more and more through those experiences. And then the opportunity at Molecular Cell came up to be our EIC editor-in-chief left, and was encouraged to think about that role and applied. It took me a long time to decide to even apply to that job because I was nervous about it, but I did, and I'm glad I did. It was a really, really great opportunity to just work with amazing people and sort of help them, work with them on putting out this journal, right? Every 2 weeks, there's a journal, there's content that we put out, and we're interacting with scientists, and just, that was great. That was a great opportunity for me to just learn how to lead. And then I became the EIC of Cell in 2018, and now I sit also on the senior management team along with Caeul. Caeul's our inclusion and diversity officer. So I have a role both as the editor-in-chief of Cell and sort of, leading all kinds of, and sometimes it feels like random things at CellPress, but, and there's too many things to put on here. I'm doing things like working on our future work, flexibility policies, thinking about things like harassment and bullying policies, both within CellPress and, inclusion policy, both within CellPress, and trying to set a good example outside of CellPress with the scientific community, because we, as some of you may know, news here in the United States, Dr. Eric Lander, resigned from the Biden administration because of accusations of bullying and harassment. So those things exist outside, and we want to be, to the extent that we can, setting a good example and, providing policies that we can point to that indicate how we believe people should behave as reviewers, as authors, as editors, and, towards one another. So lots of leadership level organizational things that I do that I haven't included here. But my core job is as the editor-in-chief of Cell. And what I do there is I lead a team. So the team does most of the work. I do very little of the work. But what we do is we, build relationships with scientists, get to know them and the work that they do, so that when exciting things happen, the work that they do, the things that they learn in their labs, they'll think of us to send it to us to publish. So what we do is those scientists submit their papers, or we're out recruiting them. We go to a lot, well, before the pandemic, we used to go to a lot of conferences. I hope that we'll be able to go back to conferences again. But learning about the science that happens, and then working with them, with reviewers, on helping that science be better, right? More rigorous, more trustworthy, more transparent. And I gave one example here, just because it's obvious, right? We're in the pandemic. And in the beginning of the pandemic, Cell, there's this paper down here in the bottom left. It's very, very basic information about the coronavirus, about SARS-CoV-2. And, that happened, I forget when we published that, like February or March 2020. And, those were the very first glimpses of the virus that informed pretty much everything else that happened downstream, right? So we have the privilege of working with scientists to get this stuff out. This information needs to get out as quickly as possible, and people need to be able to trust it. And so that's why they come to us to work with them, and readers come to us because they know that the things that we publish, they can believe in. And so here I put the New York Times thing. Jordan is very much responsible for taking the kind of story here on the bottom left and then turning it into information that the public can see and use and be informed by. And then below this is Dr. Anthony Fauci sitting in Congress testifying, holding a Cell paper. And so the trajectory of the kinds of things that we do goes from, doing the basic vetting of the work, publishing it, getting it out in the media, and then having that information inform public policy and to guide development of further science, therapeutics, research on vaccines. And then then the cycle comes around, new things are learned, variants happen. We need to know what the variants are. We're publishing the basic science of the variants. And so I just give this as an example of the kinds of things that we do as editors at the very basic level. It's just working with scientists, trying to get them to a point where they're saying something that is sound, that they aren't overstating, so that, people can build upon that work and that they can be trusted. Again, that is, the team does most of that work. I'm mostly sitting in editorial meetings, giving, questions are asked, and sometimes I weigh in, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just asking questions and, leading the team to come up with the answers. But at the basic level, that is what we do. We're publishing this journal every few weeks, and that in itself is just this amazing thing that I really love. Outside of that, the science, there's also the society component to the scientific community. And I have to say that I've been spending a lot of my time together with people here in this call, using the journal to advocate for the things that we believe in. So we've been using editorial. So we wrote this editorial that you see here, Science Has a Racism Problem. We also published one this week, late last week, assessing gender disparity among Cell authors. So looking at, there's a disparity between the population of people, the makeup of the scientific community, which is 35 to 40% women, but our authors are only 17% women. And why is that? And so we recently, with Caeul's help and working with lots of other people in the organization, started collecting the data so that we can report things like this. And we can say that with the data that we have, that we are getting only 17% of our submissions are from women, and the outcome from our process is pretty similar for men and women, but we're not getting submissions. So we're able to say things like that and have that seed discussions. And the kinds of things that we've done in this space, I'm incredibly proud of. I think that some of the most influential things that I've done as an editor have come about through things like this. I mean, I'm also proud of the science that we work on, but what we've done in this space, not to sort of toot our horns here, but I think that there's a power to our platform, and it has been quite uncomfortable for us in the past to use that platform to advocate. But I think that we have been in the past few years finding our voice and being more confident in using it. And I hope that my colleagues here on the call, on this meeting call, will agree with that statement, but we still have a lot to do. Other things that we do, we can use our platform also to make policies, right? To sort of enforce things on the community, actually. One thing that we did is not an enforcement, but where we've now, every paper at CellPress, published in CellPress, can include an inclusion and diversity statement. So as part of the actual scientific paper, you can include a statement that mentions how you've considered inclusion and diversity in your design of your research or your research team or authorship. We allow you to use that, and many of our authors do, still a minority, but we're working on that. We would like to be able to increase that. But that's something that came up actually as a reader wrote to us about this. And we were like, oh, that's an interesting idea. And then pulled a team of people together and then, had this thing that we came out with. Editors also get to organize conferences. So I put an example here at the bottom center, Hallmarks of Cancer. That's super fun thing to do. You work with the best leading scientist in the world, come up with an idea. Then you have a conference somewhere. In this case, it's San Diego. Hopefully it will happen in San Diego at the end of October. But that's a great, it's a perk of the job, in my opinion, to be able to work on these things. And the other things here are other ways in which we can use our platform to communicate not just our ideas and our opinions, but to allow the community to express their views. And we've done quite a bit of that, especially after we published the Science as a Racism Problem editorial. Many people came to us and wanted to share some of their views and some of their ideas. And so we've published a lot of those pieces in the last 2 years. So yeah, sorry, I don't know how much time we have. I still have all of these questions that I'm supposed to answer. I would just say some of the questions that I have that Tomi and Caeul posed to all of us. What is your favorite thing to do in this job? I would say, I said before that it's great to sort of at the lab work by myself because I'm an introvert, but at CellPress, there's this teamwork thing. Like, you know, the journal is a team. There's no one person that can put out a journal, right? So there's this very, very fundamental, basic team working aspect of editorial work. And I think all of the work I feel at CellPress is very, very collaborative and team oriented. So that's one of my favorite things. I love talking to scientists about their research in person when we were in person. It's one thing to read a paper, it's another thing to sit face to face with somebody and have them be excited, right? Like talk to you and have that excitement about their work. I love that. It sort of reinvigorates me anytime that I go to a conference, even though going to conferences for me is draining because I'm an introvert, but like that, feeling and seeing the exciting things that are happening out there is a really great aspect of the job. Least favorite thing, saying no, for sure, because a lot of the time we have to say no to papers. But these days we're spending a lot of our time trying, when we say no to authors, to help them find a home for their papers elsewhere at CellPress. So we've, in the past year, sort of built this whole team out that's designed to help authors, to help them navigate that post rejection situation where they're trying to figure out what next to do with their paper. But yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea. And I don't know how long I spoke for. I'm sorry if I went too long. And happy to take any questions. And my email here is on the bottom. And I just want to say, as a little plug, Jordan mentioned that he was an intern. And I'm incredibly glad that Jordan came to us and was an intern because Jordan's awesome. But we have this internship program. So if any of you are interested or know of anyone who would be interested in being an intern, I know on the editorial side, we're in the process of starting up our advertising for this, but there will be multiple roles. And so if you're just curious about what editorial work might be, I'm not sure Jordan or Noelani or Caeul if there's internship roles outside of editorial, but you know, my email is here. Please feel free to contact me. We're very interested in having people come to us, learn about editorial. Yeah, so I'll stop.
Thank you so much. I think it's time for Q&As, but I did have what just John mentioned. I'll send the links separately so that you can access them, but we do have different job postings. I saw that we have an illustrator internship also, but we also have with communication department usually and editorial, and then I'll stop now and then is there any questions you may have?
Yes, there are questions in my inbox. If anyone has any questions, then they want to say them, like I said, put your hand up if you want to answer your questions yourself, and we'll get onto that. But the first question, actually, first of all, thank you guys so much for sharing about yourself. It was really great to hear that. And I'm intrigued, but again, refraining from this being a personal discussion, I'm going to ask everyone else's questions. A great question actually that came through is, what are some of the tactics and strategies that you use to combat science misinformation?
That is a hard one. I don't know, Jordan, do you have some? I mean,
I'll give it to Jordan.
Yeah, that is a difficult question, because in the social media space, I would say, particularly for CellPress, it's about making sure you have a consistency of voice and language. in a way that you make sure you're not misconstruing the message. I think from the comms team's perspective, whenever we write press releases, we make especially sure that we're communicating with the authors, and the authors have the opportunity to check that the science and the way that we're presenting it is appropriate. So that way, and then when we put on social media, that we are able to convey that message appropriately. Now, what happens after we put it on social media, what the news agencies decide to do with the information, we do not necessarily have control over. But out of the hub of CellPress, we do make it a mission to make sure anything that comes out of us, from a press release to a tweet, is not only accurate, but informative, and also tries to bring more people to the table. So from social media, that's my answer.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And just to add to that, Jordan's team does check in with the editors on a frequent basis, and we pitch our stories. And it's also very, humbling sometimes to get questions like, we think it's a very exciting story and we pitch it to them, and then they ask very pointed question of, did they actually show this part? Or did they actually show that it happens in humans, so in disease? And we then was like, oh yeah, we try to be very accurate in what exactly the science is saying. It's okay to say that something is exciting because of the prospect of what it could mean, but we are very clear in communicating that so that it's not overblown or misinterpreted.
Yes, just to follow up on that, one thing you really do in the press office is to make sure that the papers that we're highlighting are papers that are showing something within itself and not necessarily just the potential of what might come down the line. We think that's important. And something else that's important is you get a lot of mice studies, and making sure that if it's in mice, that we say it's in mice, so people do not get misconstrued about what the research might actually say.
No, that's a great answer to that. And I think it's very important. I think particularly due to the large increase of misinformation we've been seeing throughout the pandemic, it's really important that at least there are trusted publications that are taking the steps to make sure the right information and the accurate information is getting out there.
Can I just add one thing here? I've been kind of inspired by this group of scientists. I don't know if you all know the story with the Joe Rogan and Spotify. Do you know? Yeah, so the scientists, they got together, they wrote an open letter, they engaged with Rolling Stone, they got this article published. Then all of a sudden, like Neil Young and other people are pulling their music from Spotify. Joe Rogan acknowledged something. Spotify said that they're going to add some disclaimer information. There's still a lot of work to do there, but that all started with TikTokers, scientific communicators on TikTok doing something. And I think there's something for us to learn there. I'm not sure what it is yet, but I'm very curious to talk to those people and to learn from them. So, to the extent that we can use our platforms to convey that kind of like what people are doing, where are the successes happening, where are the failures? Like, I think that there's a space for us at CellPress to use our platforms to explore those things and to help the scientific community get to a place where when somebody asks, what do you do about misinformation? It's very clear, right? I don't know if we'll ever get there, but like pie in the sky, if we could get to something like that, and we at CellPress could do something to help us get there, I would love that.
No, that sounds amazing. And I think it's great to see larger publications kind of acknowledging the work of individuals who are using their platforms on social media. I can even see a couple of science communicators in the call already who have spoken out a lot during the pandemic about misinformation and things like that. I'll ask a question for them. They're not going to ask it themselves. If you mentioned kind of working with communicators and things like that, if an individual wanted to reach out to CellPress as a science communicator, is there a way in which they can do that?
Yes, I would say there is. And I think the best avenue to do that is to actually email press@cell.com and write your inquiry there. And then someone on our team would be happy to get back to you and see what maybe we can collaborate and see what we can do.
Great. Okay. I can see Tolu, you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Tolu. I am a master's physics student at King's, but I'm also a research assistant for the Department of Psychology and Neuroscience at King's as well. I have like my own science comms like blog on Instagram, But lately I've been talking to a few researchers and they've been telling me to get a Twitter account and to start doing more science communications on Twitter. So I just wanted to get your advice on what platforms do you think are most relevant for researchers, and what kind of information would you like to see us posting on there? Like how regularly, and what kind of information would you like to see us? How would you like us to use it, basically?
I guess from a social media perspective, I would say, one, the researchers are correct that Twitter really remains the #1 spot in terms of social media news and getting things out quickly, and it's really powerful in that way. As a science communicator, when it's like, what should I be talking about? My personal feeling is you should be talking about the science that gets you excited. You should be talking about that science that makes you want to remain in science and expand the message. That should really be the emphasis. And in terms of maybe what other platforms you could use, or actually when it comes to frequency. So frequency, not to get too technical, but frequency does depend on the platform which you are. Twitter, you can be doing 10 tweets a day and probably wouldn't think too much. Instagram, maybe just a few times a week. But also all these different social media platforms have their own space for science communication. So find what works for you and the way you best like to communicate your science. Maybe you're someone who likes to be more visual. That'd be great for TikTok, like a Hank Green, who does very well in that space. Maybe you're more of a writer. That can be a Twitter situation, right? And so just think of it that way. What social media works best for you? And then if you do it consistently enough, that audience will follow.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for answering my question.
To add to that, I even see some of my colleagues like posting on LinkedIn. And as he said, it's not as frequent, like LinkedIn wouldn't be as frequent, but if you find something that really touches you or inspires you, you can share that. And that can also help with your networking.
Amazing.
Thank you, thank you. I just want to say you did really well speaking in public. I would never know that you were nervous. So
thank you very much.
Adama, you can take the floor.
Oh, sorry, hope this works. Hi, my name's Adama. I was a research technician, and so I'm coming with my questions from like a blog aspect. So I run a science blog called The Catalyst in Me, where I interview people about like their life science careers and why they did it. And as someone also interested in like science writing, possibly getting to editing and all of that, I think I wanted to understand, maybe from everyone, like your thought process when you were getting into like wanting to do a form of science writing. And I guess especially for, I guess, how the point on your path that you decided, okay, I'm going to, for lack of a better word, leave the direct science behind, because I think that might play in people's head. Like, when do you decide, okay, I think I'm done like physically doing science? So something I kind of play around with is, I really enjoy the science, but do I feel like I can talk about it knowing that maybe I'm not going to get to PhD level? And I think like a more career question is, with the different roles, because I've looked into it and just looked at them, where do you think a PhD is extremely relevant? And you know that, okay, yes, you have to have a PhD to have this role, like there's no way around it. And if you don't want to get a PhD, how do you progress within like the editing field and all of that?
I guess I'll answer just to point. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, I mean, I think that in general, I would say, you know, I don't know, nothing is permanent, right? Like people, I think that any opportunity that you have where you can try to do something different is an opportunity that, yeah, you should consider taking. And there's no, it's not like an off-ramp that you can't get back on if you decide you want to, after all, continue that education or that PhD. Like, it's still possible. And many times people in editorial even go back. We have colleagues who have gone back to do, you know, academic things or gone into industry or various things where you would have thought that this might be an off-ramp. It's not. It's just a you know, station along the way of your career. So when I left, I would say that I viewed it as training. I viewed it as, I'm going to get a chance to talk to ask to, you know, people, reviewers, people who I really respect. And I want to know how their brains work. I want to know how they review papers. I want to know how they're responding to reviewers. And if I don't like this, I don't like it. And that's for editorial, a very real possibility, because as PhD in training as a scientist, there's no part of training that is editorial, right? So like any editor comes into this not knowing what this is like, unless you do something now like our newfangled editorial internships, right? But those didn't exist before. So I would say, yeah, take the chance to learn about something new and don't think of it as something that necessarily is permanent. Jordan?
And circle back on your question about the science writing and the decision when to leave academia. So this is all very specific and personal, but for my personal experience, I went into a PhD program and I kind of went in already kind of on the fence about academia and whether I wanted to go into the science communications route. In my particular situation, I was at the end of my first year of my PhD, and my PI at the time decided, well, she got an opportunity to change programs and go to a different university. I had just moved to Chicago from California. I was going through a lot of things emotionally with that move, and I said, I don't think it's appropriate for me to uproot myself and take myself to a different part of the country and go through that again, especially when I'm not sure if this is the path I want to remain in. Maybe this is a sign for me to take a step back. And luckily for me, my PI was very supportive in that and introduced me to people who had PhDs and went the SciComm route. And from those conversations, I learned things such as, for a lot of the science communications careers, a PhD is not necessary. That isn't going to be a block for you. And so I took the opportunity to step away, and I made my own website for a while. I tried dabbling with podcasting. And to be honest, even though that may have not gotten a lot of following and a lot of traffic, what it did do is let me go through the creative process of working on science writing for myself, building it out, and then that became something that I could show people when I was trying to apply for a job in the science communication space. So just in case for anyone out there, if you're thinking of if you are doing a blog, I would be less focused on followers and what's going on there, but consistency and trying new things and flexing your muscles creatively, so that way that can be used for a potential pitch for a job down the road. Yeah, that's my answer. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. I love that that conversation is happening, and I hope that's inspirational. Like I said, I know a lot more of you in the chat or in the meeting have blogged yourself or running some sort of science communication platform. Saying that, I think somebody has asked, this will remain anonymous as they've asked directly. There was a mention of someone needed to run the TikTok. How do they apply? They're shooting their shot here. They said, I want to run your TikTok, basically.
The TikTok is not running yet. That is definitely something on the back burner. We're just trying to get our legs together with the reels. And then, and then we'll go on for but I will say, if you're interested in maybe being a part of the press office team, we do have the internship that I was in, the science communications internship from the press office. There's an undergraduate as well as a graduate internship. And if that's something you're interested in, you could apply. We have capstones for everyone who comes through, and your potential capstone project could be getting us on the TikTok. So think about.
Cool. That's good to know. That's good to know. So that person there, like, it may have worked, get that application in. Great. A question directly for Noelani. As someone who isn't from a science background, do you enjoy working in science, and would you do it again?
Oh my goodness, 100,000 times yes. I love CellPress, and I would say prior to working with CellPress, I had no idea about how much scientists and researchers contribute to this field. Science was my most disliked subject in school, science and math. And for some reason, it's the higher being keeps putting me in science. I also worked for Primer, which was public responsibility in research 2 years ago as an operations associate. So I've always been doing administrative work and customer service and hospitality. But that was a great question the previous person asked about how do you navigate this field, like if you're new to the field, or like she just has a blog, how to get into this field, like how to become an editor. And now I'm like, should I go back to school? Like that's something that I'm thinking, like I would love to explore the editorial side. I'm always working behind the scenes. So now I'm like, okay, how do I go from here? Because another position that they have similar to editorial operations is copy editor. So copy editors, they go through like the formatting and grammar and things like that and on the production team. So that's another similar position, but I do have interest in maybe exploring like the editorial side. So one of my goals is every year we set objectives of what we want to accomplish within that year. And one of my goals is maybe shadowing an editor to find out how this process is, because one of my questions was, do I need a PhD or do I need to further my education to become an editor? And just also to piggyback on that, I have a new editor on my team for the Neuron Journal who was working in the lab, never done any editing, never had any experience with editorial, but now they're working with our team as an editor. So like John and Jordan said, sometimes you just have to jump into it. And CellPress is really good with like guiding you. They'll hold your hand through the process. So if you feel like you have the credibility, just like take that chance. You'll be very happy.
Well, no, that's really encouraging. And I think that also leads on to, I think you touched on it slightly, but another question that somebody had is, what is progression like at Cell? I would like to join, or I'm considering joining, but they're worried about moving across fields and moving downwards and not being able to make that progress back up. Does anyone have any input on that? What is progression at Cell like?
Excuse me, can I say something really quick? I would just say there's a lot of opportunity for growth. In my role, something that I've been just concerned with, like as an editorial operations associate, I'm like, where do I go from here? But there's been people in my same position who are now supervisors. So they're leading people that are in my position. But that's something that intrigued me about this company, is the longevity and the time that people have spent working here. There's some people who started off in my position who are now like senior leaders or working in editing. So there's always opportunity for growth, and there's always a support system or someone to like help you get to where you're trying to go.
Amazing. I love that.
I should add also that CellPress is part of Elsevier, which is a giant organization, publisher. And so there are opportunities there too. And, you know, as Noelani alluded to, people sort of move between roles at CellPress and in Elsevier. So there's opportunities there too, all sort of every aspect of scientific publishing. And Caeul is actually somebody who's moved quite a bit in her relatively short time at CellPress. I mean, Caeul, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what your experience has been.
Yeah, I've been with CellPress for about 4 years now. Yes, and I think the CellPress has grown tremendously, which is a great time to be at CellPress, because there are lots of opportunities that arises in things you're interested in. So I was interested in going more into things I can do for inclusion and diversity, and those opportunities arose quite organically. At the same time, it's still small enough that you don't get lost in a sea of employees. I think relative to my short time, I was able to, you know, like talk to my manager. Our managers have been all very supportive on the things you want to explore outside of your core editorial job. And once you make that clear, my manager has also been very good in connecting me to the right group of people to work on these things. And now I've done a lot more, you know, coordinating different initiatives, project management type of things. So thinking about my next steps, I am thinking of what else could I do where I can do more of that instead of just the editorial part of the job, which is more reading and more direct communication science. So I think, yeah, there is a lot of movement in all directions. There are lots of opportunity for what we call secondment, which means a short period of time where you work in a completely different department, for example, for 3 to 6 months, and then someone backfills for your position without you having to make the absolute commitment to switch out of a job when you're not sure. So I think that has been quite helpful for my own career path at CellPress.
No, thank you so much. And I do feel like that evil person who's coming in reminding everyone that we're on the clock and the hour has gone by so fast. So unfortunately, that was the last question, but there are a lot more questions. I'm wondering if CellPress team, if you'd be happy for me to send it to you via email and maybe answer me some of those, and I can send that back to everyone just so you can get your questions answered. You also have the slides, so any information that were in the slides will be shared. I know you have you shared all your slides, Caeul?
I think I have a couple more links that I would want to send it to you. So I'll reshare the slides with the right links. And I think John and Jordan all mentioned it, but we are all very happy to get emails to our email inboxes. We can connect you to the right teams if we can answer the right questions. So we'll send you that too.
Amazing. Yeah, so if any of the questions you had were for specific people, feel free to, I guess, send them an email. Thank you guys so much for offering that. That's amazing. We really appreciate that. Thank you everyone for coming. It's been great. I've really enjoyed this hour. I wish it could have been longer, but who knows? I've sent a feedback form in the chat. So literally anything you wanted more from, if you wanted to see them again, I mean, just like write the comment. There's room to write comments and stuff like that. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you've all enjoyed it as well. And I will sign off here saying thank you to the people attending. Thank you everyone from CellPress for joining. It's been a privilege to have you here and we really appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.